one of the big mistakes that we see quite often. Now, this is very risky. As a commission-only rep, time blocking is really going to help you in making sure that you're being as efficient as possible with your time, right? Because when you're commission only, one of the most important things is making sure that you're focusing on money-making activity in the right hours, right? It's not just about who dials more and who works more. Yes, it can be a numbers game and you can get it done that way, but most of us want to play an efficiency game. Most of us don't want to work 27 hours a day for the rest of our lives. Even if we are doing that right now, we usually want to get out of that cycle at some point. And so one of the first things that you can do that makes it really easy is to start setting up time blocking. Now, the reason that I like time blocking is because for me, I got into 1099 sales and into insurance because I wanted that freedom, right? I didn't want a very rigid schedule. I wanted the freedom and flexibility to be able to do the things that I wanted and still be able to make money. And so time blocking gave me that flexibility where if let's say my kids were up all night, right? And I was supposed to be up at 6 and I typically get up and dial at 6 a.m. So that I can hit the East Coast, right? Because I'm a couple hours behind the East Coast. Well, because I'm 1099 and I'm my own boss, right? Maybe I sleep in. And because I know that that time may not be as efficient. And so time blocking is going to be one of the most effective strategies. And so if you're new to time blocking, you can do a lot of research about this. It's not a foreign concept, and it's exactly what it sounds like, right? All you're going to do is set blocks in your calendar that show you what you should be doing at that time. And then the key is to make sure you're holding yourself accountable to that, right? And actually following those blocks. And so now the hard part is figuring out, where do I actually set those blocks up? This is a big question that I get all the time, which is, how do I actually structure my day? How do I structure my week to make sure that I'm the most efficient? And so I'm going to give you guys some generics, right? But ultimately what you want to do is structure it in a way and track it in a way that you can start to really refine this and see where the most productive times are. I talked about this in my last YouTube video where we talked about agent profitability. And so in that, you are going to track what time of day most of your sales are coming through. And that's going to in turn help us with the time blocking so that we can make sure the time of day that we're getting most of our sales, we have that set down for money making activity. And we're not doing something like going to the gym or, making breakfast or whatever it may be at that time. And so you have to make sure that you're doing that. But in general, right, mornings from 8 a.m. to about 11 a.m. is going to be your first dial block. Okay, that's going to be your first prospecting block. And so you want to make sure that during those hours, you're reaching out and you're looking for new business and acquiring new customers. Okay, so the mornings are going to be, in general, a time where you're doing a lot of prospecting. Now, the next block is typically going to be in the evenings, right? Typically, that's going to be from, let's say, 3 to 7, maybe it's 6, depending on the time zone, right? Now, maybe you're saying, hey, I don't want to work until 7 o'clock. Okay, well, if we're doing telesales, you could easily just work other time zones, okay? Now, the reason that we typically are going to work in the evenings is if your clients are working, then you can meet with them after work. They don't have to miss work, and it makes it a lot easier to fit into their day. And if you're working the different time zones, now you don't have to work into the evenings. You can still work and get done at 5 if you want to be done at 5 and meet with them at 7 o'clock their time. And so that makes it a lot easier. Now, if you're doing a 2-call close, meaning you're reaching out to people, you're doing an outbound call, and then you're scheduling an appointment, right? All you're going to do, now it's going to depend on your lead type and your show-up rate, right? So if your show-up rate is anything below 50%, then I'm just going to schedule those appointments into those blocks, and I'm going to keep dialing up until those appointments. So one of the big mistakes that we see quite often is people will stop dialing, let's say 30 minutes before their actual appointment time. Now, this is very risky if we only have a 50% show-up rate. And why is that risky? Because we just left 30 minutes of dialing and we just took that off the table, and then there's only a 50% shot, or maybe lower, that that person's going to show up to the appointment. So essentially, we just spent 30, 45 minutes not dialing and not reaching out to people for an appointment that most likely is not going to show up. And so if my show up rate is low, I want to make sure that I continue to dial up into the show up rate. And then if I get somebody on the phone, I'm just going to text that person and say, hey, apologies, I'm running a few minutes behind. I had another client reach out to me. I will call you as soon as humanly possible, right? And people don't mind that as long as you let them know. People are very, very understanding. And this is going to allow you to be as efficient as possible. Now, if you have a really good show up rate, then all you're going to do is you're going to flip-flop it, right? You want to have some days where the evening blocks are your appointment blocks. And then you want to have some days where you have a block in the middle of the day for appointments and some days where you have a block in the morning for appointments. That way you can get different times of days depending on when people need their appointments to happen. And then whatever block is where you have your appointments, the opposite block is going to be where you're doing that outbound prospecting to actually schedule in those appointments, right? And then typically what you're going to do is you're going to do your more administrative tasks right there in the middle of the day when pickup rates drop, right? Now, as time goes on, a really easy way to make sure that you're time blocking efficiently, and this is something that I got from my mentor, Matt Ryder. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to pull up your Google Calendar while you're dialing, right? And at the end of every hour, you're just going to go and you're going to color code the entire calendar at the end of every hour of your dial time and put either red, yellow, or green, right? And if my pickup rate is above a certain amount, I'm going to mark that green. Now, I'm not giving you guys specific numbers because everybody's pickup rate will vary depending on what dialer you're using and what softwares you're using. Like if you're using most dialing softwares that are using basically poor telecommunication services, you guys can go look at Matt's YouTube channel to learn more about that, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there right now, but most dialers out there are doing things that are not actually getting you the best show up rate possible or the best pickup rate possible, so your pickup rate will be low, right? And so if I have one of those and my average pickup rate, let's say, is 5%, my green block might be anytime I have a pickup rate above 7, right? And then anytime I go below 3, that might be red, and then from 3 to 7 is going to be where it's yellow. That's my average, okay? Now, if you're using a software like Matt has with Dialer.io, your pickup rate is probably going to be a lot better. Ultimately, what really matters, your pickup rate matters, but what really matters is your contact rate, right? You want to know how many of your leads you're getting in contact with, but that's a different rabbit hole that we'll go into in a following video, right? Is your contact rate. And so that is how you can start to really be efficient with it. You have your Google Calendar pulled up and you figure out a color coding. And after a month, it becomes very easy to look back on that calendar and see exactly where people are picking up what time of days. And now you can time block your prospecting blocks to where people are picking up the most. Okay, so that's going to allow you to be a lot more efficient. And really make sure that during those high profitability times, what you're focusing on is actually prospecting and actually making money and actually reaching out to people. Because one of the biggest mistakes that I see most 1099 salespeople make, not just in insurance, but across all industries, is they sit in front of their computer and they feel like they're working 12 hours a day, but actually they're doing 3 hours of money making activity, and they are just doing a bunch of administrative random things for the other 9 hours that, while a lot of the things they are doing may need to happen, typically they are doing them too slow or they're taking a very long time. And then what ends up happening is you get paid a part-time income because you're only doing part-time money-making activity, but you're sitting in front of your computer full-time or overtime hours. And so you feel like you're working a lot and not getting paid very much. And that is just a recipe for disaster, right? And so this time blocking can really help you make sure that you're not doing that. Okay, and then you want to make sure that you're focused on your most profitable things during those hours, right? That's why you're going to set up that color coding so that you know, okay, this is when my pickup rate is the best, so I'm going to focus on prospecting there. But same thing goes for if you're doing appointments. I also want to track the time of days and where I have the best show up rates. And so for us, historically, Monday mornings and Friday afternoons and Saturdays are going to provide a much lower show up rate than Tuesday through Thursday or even Monday afternoon, right? And this is just because people in their life have things come up, right? On Thursday, they feel really good about scheduling that appointment for Monday morning, right? They want to get the insurance taken care of and they say, yes, let's talk on Monday morning. And then they do whatever they do over the weekend. It's a long weekend. Monday morning rolls around and the last thing they want to do is talk about insurance. And so they no-show you, or maybe they just forget, right? And so you want to start tracking where are my best show up rates if I'm doing that 2-call close or maybe a 3-call close, whatever you may be doing, right? And so I want to see where my best show up rates are. And the best version of that is I know where my best pickup rates are. I know where my best show up rates are, and then I can be as efficient as possible. I can work less hours and make more money and really structure my week to move forward the best. And so in general, as an insurance agent, how your week is most likely going to look is going to be reaching out to people. On Monday morning, you're going to have a time block for dialing, right? But typically you're just going to hit the new leads that have came in over the weekend and then probably move on to your administrative tasks, because Monday mornings, like we just talked about, people generally are going to be picking up less if there are leads that you've already been working for a couple of weeks, or appointments are not going to show up. Right? So I'm going to hit those new leads and then I'm going to go focus on the administrative tasks that I need to do to get prepared for the week. And then I'm going to have my afternoon prospecting block or appointment block. Okay. Tuesdays, I'm going to have my dial block first thing in the morning. In the afternoon is where I'm going to do my administrative tasks. I'm going to have another dial block in the evening. I'm going to repeat that through Thursday. And then on Fridays, I'm typically going to have the opposite of Monday, right? A prospecting or appointment block in the morning. And then in Friday afternoons, that's where I'm recapping the week. I have an administrative block there at the end where I can start to finish things up. And what a saying we have on our team is Fridays are for follow-up. Okay, so those Friday afternoons, right, after I've already done my initial follow-up in the morning, right, I'm going to start following up with everybody that I talk to throughout the week, because I know that Friday afternoons and Saturdays are when those customers that I haven't been able to get a hold of yet, the leads that I haven't been able to get a hold of, the pickup rates are going to go lower. So I'm going to reach out to all those people that said, yes, I'm interested, call me back later, that I wasn't able to get on the phones, or maybe I had an appointment with them and they no-showed, or whatever it may be. I'm going to follow up with them in the afternoon and Saturday, assuming that you're working Saturday. That way, I'm being as efficient as possible, right? Because those leads are typically, right, they said they were interested, they asked us to follow up. Okay, I'm hitting them in times where they're probably not at work, and that gives me a higher chance to have success. To give you guys an example, there was a time where we had done a team lock-in. We were all in one building, we were all in the same place, right? We were working through the weekend on a Saturday, and on that Saturday, everybody was dialing their ass off, right? Everybody's working really hard. They're getting a deal here and there, right? And I was just walking around supporting other people, helping other people. And transparently, I was just having fun, right? I like having fun. I like to smile. I was fucking around the whole time. People were getting frustrated with me, but they could only get so frustrated because I put 4 deals on the board. How did I put those deals on the board? Every time I went back to my computer and started dialing, I was hitting my follow-up list, right? And so on that follow-up list, I had higher pickups and there was higher intent, right? And so I made less dials, but I made more sales and bigger sales than everybody else. And so even though I was walking around having fun, chopping it up with everybody, right, I was making the most of that Saturday. Now, if it was a Wednesday, I would not have been doing that, right? But on a Saturday, I know that my pickup rate is going to be lower, right? The people that I haven't already talked to are going to be in the middle of their Saturday. They most likely don't want to talk about insurance. Whereas when I talk to those people that I'm following up with, they're ready for the conversation. They want to have the conversation. Typically, they're apologizing to me that we haven't been able to do it yet. And they're just saying, hey, I've been so busy at work. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to no-show our appointment. And let's just get it done right now. And we're able to knock it out for them. And so that is typically what your structure is going to look at throughout the week. From there, pro tip, it's just about being efficient in those dial blocks, right? Efficiency is going to be the key, right? A big thing that we see, especially if you're coming from a salary-based position, is that when people get into a 1099 position where you're commission only, you have to learn to be more efficient, right? Because when you're in a 1099 or when you're in a salary job, you're not rewarded for being efficient. Typically, if you finish your work early when you have a salary or you're paid hourly, right, you're not going to get paid more. They're just going to give you more work. And so we're taught to stretch out the work. And so when we get into this environment, we have to learn how to be more efficient, right? If we both have a 3-hour dial block, and in that 3 hours, I book 10 appointments, and I'm able to book 10 appointments because I made 300 calls. And in that time, you made 100 calls. Obviously, you compound that throughout the week, and I've done 4 times the amount of work in that week compared to you, right? And so it's really important to make sure that you're being efficient in those time blocks and not just setting up the time blocks. They aren't going to solve the whole problem if the problem is your efficiency. So make sure that in those time blocks, you guys are being focused. A pro tip or a hack that you can do to make sure that you stay focused, I got this from Alex Hormozy, is to get a timer like this where you can just set the timer, close everything else out that is on your computer or on your phone so there's no other distractions, right? And you hit that timer. That way you have a countdown and you can see when you'll be done, and you only focus on what you're working on in that time block while that timer is going. Then when the timer is done, you're done with that time block, you can take a little break and move on to the next task. So if this helps, or if you want to explore working with us and you want to work with a team that is actually going to help you look at these things and know how to strategically do it and make it easier for you, the link in the description. We do a call every single week where we talk about our different sales teams and the different opportunities where we're able to help get people up and going and scaling very quickly and making money as a 1099 commission rep. See you guys on the next one.